Okay, hello. Sorry about
There you
that.
go.
Hey,
How's that?
Oh, wow, we're all here. This is amazing. A
Perfect.
little problem with my invites.
Oh, it's all good. It's
oh,
all
I'll stop my share.
okay. I'll start mine. How are you guys?
hey, good.
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 Can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Is
Okay.
my volume okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I just having some trouble with these earphones. But good. Are you feeling better, Sarah, after having had a cold and
Oh
you
my
managed through
goodness.
last week?
I tested negative for COVID, but I don't believe I didn't have COVID. And it was okay,
Oh
this
man.
is yeah, I think it's gonna be a few weeks. Something's gone sideways here. Let me try this again.
There you go.
Can you see that now?
hmm
Yeah, it's just there we go.
There you go.
Perfect. There we go. Fits in nicely and yeah.
hmm
Yeah. That's great. And for everybody that's joining, okay, yeah, the Sarah's website, wellsunday.com is there. And I've also just popped the link in the chat box. We are recording. That's good. So yeah. And we're at 6. So that's perfect.
Perfect.
Great. Well, I'm glad that you're feeling better
Thank you.
because I know there's a few things going around that they're taking a while to get.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so glad that you could be here.
Thank you.
So welcome everybody. This is session number 2 of gut health and chronic pain that we're moving through this month with Dr. Sarah Robbins. Really happy to have her here. And I'll pass it to Dr. Mark to open us up and get us going here.
Okay. Thanks very much. Yeah. Welcome back, Sarah. And we have the privilege of having you for this 4-week program on the microbiome and gut health. So thank you very much. It's been really, really well attended and well received. The first evening was probably one of the busiest we've ever had, I think. So that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So yeah, on behalf of the clinic, thank you very much for putting on this series. It's really important, and we hope to learn a lot. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a
Well,
lot.
nice to see you guys and nice to have all the participants out there. I can't see you with the way we have this webinar set up, so I'm happy for questions as we go. And Madeline's going to keep an eye on the chat and any questions that come up. So
Yeah,
we'll
I
just
will.
keep it easy going. I embedded some QR codes into this presentation. So a little bit further along, there's sort of some more practical things that we can do around gut health. And there's some PDFs and links that are that you can access. So if you just have your phone handy, you will be able to scan the QR code from your computer screen and you can download and access all of those
Wow, that's
PDFs as we go.
fantastic. I haven't figured out how to do that.
Oh, there's so much good stuff out there these days. So tonight we're going to talk about the microbiome a little bit and linking microbiome to pain. Now, I do this with the caveat that I am the gut expert and not the pain expert. But I think many of your audience will be very well informed. So we'll kind of not spend too much time on that, and hopefully spend most of our time this evening speaking around really practical applications for how to get a healthy gut microbiome and a healthy gut. This is really an emerging field. I think that's my second caveat. There is so much coming out on this. It's so fascinating. But we also have a lot to learn, both in terms of understanding the pathophysiology the links between the gut and the brain and the gut microbiome, and then how we use that for therapeutic purposes. And how we use that even to go a step further and not only have a healthy gut, but how we can potentially even manage chronic pain through gut health and a healthy gut microbiome. So a lot to come over the next few years in this topic, and we'll have to revisit it once a year maybe. So let's start with defining what the microbiome is. And many of us have heard about it, we talk about it, but it's really this complex community. And if you joined us last week, we talk about it in terms of being more of an ecosystem, thinking about the microbiome like this old growth forest that's a part of us. And it's really composed of a number of different organisms that include bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other types of microbes. So it's not just bacteria. And I think that that's an important thing to know about, because that helps us understand sometimes what supplements might be useful that we can use and leverage to obtain good gut health. The microbiome is important for a number of different reasons, and this is just a small list. We know that there are many relevant applications for understanding the gut microbiome. It's important, in this context, in terms of digestive health, not only in terms of breaking down fiber and complex carbohydrates, but a number of other mechanisms. It helps us to train and regulate the immune system, much of which is housed inside the gut, and it helps to protect us against harmful microbes. It also has an interaction with the gut-brain axis through a number of different mechanisms. So it has a potential to modulate mental health as well as the health of our gut, and potentially even help us to understand how to manage pain. So it's an important part of our overall well-being. We can think of it in terms of metabolic health as well, and cardiovascular health. And I'm sure a number of new mechanisms are going to continue to be elucidated. So understanding the gut-brain connection becomes really important, because the microbiome, these trillions of organisms that reside within us, has been shown to modulate parts of the nervous system, and this can potentially help to understand how this impacts pain. So the gut-brain axis really refers to the biochemical signaling that takes place between the gastrointestinal tract and the central nervous system. And this involves direct and indirect pathways that not only allow the gut to relay information to the brain, but also enable the brain to exert an influence back on the gut. This includes neuroanatomical connections, such as the vagus nerve, the enteric nervous system, or that second brain, which is the nervous system of the gut that operates semi-independently, but also communicates with the central nervous system via the vagus nerve and the spinal cord, and is really very important in a number of digestive processes. There are a number of biochemical signaling pathways, including neurotransmitters, the immune system, and hormonal signaling, all of which are an important part of the gut-brain axis, really allowing the gut and the brain to interact and communicate. And this has a number of clinical applications that relate to mental health, to our stress response, and to brain health. So we can link the microbiome and the nervous system through a number of different ways. And there have been demonstrated impacts on behavior and mental and emotional health, neurotransmitter production. And now we're also seeing some links with neurodegenerative disease, such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So really interesting links between the microbiome and the brain are starting to emerge. When it comes to chronic pain, the microbiome is really central to that gut-brain axis. So the communication between the gut and the brain is really mediated by the gut microbiome, almost acting as a translator in the conversation between your brain and your gut. And this can influence a number of different pathways, including pain perception and chronic pain conditions. The microbiome is also involved in an inflammatory response and can help to regulate inflammation, not only in the gut, but through chemicals and neurotransmitters that then are related to systemic inflammation. And this may in turn be related to the perpetuation of chronic pain. And finally, neurotransmitters are produced and metabolized by the gut microbiome, which can help to modulate pain sensitivity as well as the body's pain response. So all of these different factors can really play into how the microbiome impacts pain. And of course, we also know that this helps to regulate our stress response, and our stress response is really very important in terms of how we're able to manage and cope with pain. And there's also some emerging evidence that shows us that gut bacteria may influence the endogenous or our own production of opiates that can relate to the pain response. So we know that the gut microbiome is really important in this pathway, and I think a lot of the pathophysiology and our understanding of that is really continuing to evolve. But one of the things that we often talk about is how you can get a healthy gut microbiome. If we know it's so important, what do we need to do in order to maintain the health of the microbiome and really optimize gut health so that we can have all of these other benefits across our entire body? So that leads me to the question of, well, what is a healthy gut microbiome? What does that actually mean? And it encompasses a number of different characteristics. So we know that a healthy gut microbiome is diverse. It has a rich array of different microbial species, bacteria that provide kind of a robust response against pathogens, contribute to better health outcomes, and overall help to improve our own resilience. So higher microbial diversity is associated with improved metabolic processes and immune responses. And in general, the more diversity we have in the microbiome, the better. There's also a term called eubiosis of bacterial populations, meaning that beneficial microbes outnumber and outcompete potentially harmful ones. So an imbalance is dysbiosis, where there are more harmful than beneficial bacteria, and that can lead to or exacerbate conditions like inflammatory bowel disease, obesity, metabolic diseases, and even mental health disorders. We know that certain bacteria are known to be particularly beneficial for health, and we're learning more about these all the time, but you may hear about bacteria such as bifidobacterium or lactobacilli that have important roles in helping us digest food, produce vitamins, and support the immune system. They're also known to produce short-chain fatty acids, which are really critical for gut health. A healthy microbiome produces beneficial metabolites. So the short-chain fatty acids that we talked about, other types of chemicals that are produced by the microbiome help to regulate gut cells, immune cells, and they also maintain the integrity of the gut lining. A healthy microbiome is able to respond and adapt to changes in your diet, and it has a lot of resilience and stability over time. Our gut microbiome has a number of different functions, and so it's really important. It plays an important role in a number of different factors. It's important for digestion and production of nutrients, so it's really a key player in digestion and absorption. I think we always used to think of our gut as being the main player in digestion and absorption, but in fact, the gut microbiome breaks down a lot of nutrients that are not digested in the small bowel and are intact when they reach the colon. So the gut microbiome is really important for that. It helps to produce vitamins as well as to release vitamins from nutrients. It's involved, as I mentioned before, in the regulation of the immune system. It helps to protect against other types of pathogens. The gut microbiome is involved in the motility of the gut, which really influences a lot of our gut function. And it's also been shown to be important in the gut-brain axis, as we've mentioned. So it has a number of different roles, and that's probably quite a short list. I could make it even longer. So when we think about the factors that deteriorate the gut microbiome, there's a number of different ones. And I think that the obvious one is antibiotic use, because antibiotics are harmful to negative bacteria, but they're also harmful to beneficial bacteria that are in our gut. We know that there's a number of associations with diet and an unhealthy diet that deteriorate the gut microbiome, and we're going to talk about a few of those today. Chronic sleep deprivation, stress have both been associated with negative impacts on the gut microbiome. There are a number of environmental toxins that have also been shown to deteriorate the gut microbiome. And unfortunately, as we get older, aging is associated with less diversity and less resilience in the gut microbiome. There's a number of other types of GI infections that can also be quite disruptive to the gut microbiome in general.
Right, I have an interesting question that might be helpful right now. But Cease, just if I could just ask this now. Cease asked, I think I can imagine a microbiome, but what is it specifically? Like, is it in the juices and the enzymes in the stomach? Is it a form, or is it a fluid?
Oh, it's a great question. So, um, so when we're talking about the gut microbiome, we're mostly talking about the bacteria that reside in the colon. There's a real, ecosystem is a great way to think of the gut microbiome, because it's really organized differently throughout the gut. So the microbiome that's in our mouth compared to the few organisms that live in our stomach, compared to the small bowel, compared to the colon, are all very different. So when we're referring to the gut microbiome, we're really talking about the massive number of bacteria that reside in the colon, in the large bowel. And those are sort of mixed throughout. They're mixed into the stool, so they're just present in the lumen or the inside of the gut, but they're also adherent along the cell walls of the gut. So they form, people have probably heard about biofilms. So there's a film of bacteria, which isn't a bad thing, that resides along the lining of the gut, and then there are also, within the stool and the fluids that are inside the lining of the gut. And so there's a lot of order actually to the gut microbiome in terms of how it's organized, not only in terms of the abundance and diversity of different types of organisms, but also along the length of the GI tract. It really varies quite a bit. We're going to talk about fiber, but when we get to insoluble fiber, a lot of insoluble fibers, if you think about the roughage that we eat, almost provides like scaffolding within the stool, or structure that really allows like a lot of microbes to exist and to thrive within the gut. So one of the roles of the fiber that we eat is to provide that kind of scaffolding or structure for them to hang on to.
Wow. And on the last list, infections like parasites or other bacteria?
Yeah, and even viral infections, which is interesting. If we think about a viral gastroenteritis, that can have a deleterious impact on the microbiome or the type of bacteria. So almost when we get an infection of any type within the gut, it kind of disrupts the balance. You can almost think of it as being like this teeter-totter or seesaw of good versus bad. And that balance that we're often in can be disrupted by a number of different types of infections, whether they're viral or bacterial. And so it's that imbalance that occurs.
Thanks.
So we want to keep our microbiome healthy, and there's a number of different levers that we can pull to do that. And that's what we want to talk about tonight, really practical steps for how we can maintain the health of our microbiome. Whether we come into that in a state of health or with a really healthy microbiome that's well balanced, or whether we are in a state of imbalance, perhaps after having had an infection or antibiotics or some kind of exposure. How do we tip the scales? How do we get back into balance? And these recommendations are relevant in both instances. So we can use nutrition as our primary lever to achieve a healthier microbiome. It's really the number one thing that you can do. And if we think about wanting to have a lot of diversity and abundance in the microbiome, the more diversity and abundance we have, the better the health outcomes across a number of different disease states. Then the more diverse and abundance our nutrition and our diet, the more we're going to drive diversity and abundance in the microbiome. So they really, really go hand in hand. We know that processed and sugary foods, a lot of things that we're exposed to have negative impacts on the health of the gut microbiome. So really thinking about whole foods and foods that we're able to cook from home or avoiding packaging, things like that, actually become quite relevant to the health of the gut microbiome. And choosing healthy fats, so avoiding trans fats aren't widely available anymore to us, thankfully. But saturated fats, for example, are associated with a less robust microbiome. So in general, we want to think about eliminating these types of inflammatory foods. So highly processed foods, processed meats, for example, that have a number of additives, nitrates and binders and things like that, refined carbohydrates, and unhealthy fats have all been shown to increase gut inflammation and to have a negative impact on the gut microbiome. We want to focus on our fruits and veggies and fibers as much as possible. These are important for the function of the gut overall, but they're also extremely important for promoting healthy gut microbiome. And then we want to think about what we can do to incorporate probiotic-rich foods into our diet to add a further layer of support. So as I mentioned, diversity matters, and the more whole grains, whole foods, fruits and veggies that you can pack in to your diet in general, the better. This has been shown to have a number of positive impacts overall around promoting a healthy gut microbiome. So fiber is particularly important, and not all fiber is the same. There's two different types of fiber that we can think of primarily. Soluble fiber is the type of fiber that dissolves in water and forms kind of a gel-like substance. So soluble fiber can be fermented by the bacteria in the gut, which leads to the production of these short-chain fatty acids, which have a number of health benefits. So when the gut microbiome breaks down these soluble type fibers, the chemicals that are released from that provide short-chain fatty acids. And these are fuel cells for the cells of the lining of the gut. They have been shown to reduce inflammation. They regulate the immune system on a number of different levels. The things we can think about are oats, for example, apples, or in a supplement, psyllium husk, which has been around for a long, long time, is a great source of soluble. Insoluble fiber, like I mentioned, is that roughage, and this is really important for adding bulk to the stool. So if we think about things like whole grains, nuts, or seeds, the firmer skins on a lot of fruits or vegetables, this really forms more of an insoluble type fiber, which helps to regulate bowel movements. So getting more fiber into our diet can be hard. And so many people say this to me. They're like, I know I should eat fiber. I've been told to have fiber so many times, but I don't feel well when I do it. And I think the number one thing I can tell you to do is to go slow. It's so important because as you're adding more dietary fiber and really trying to steer towards more fruits and vegetables and high grains, you need to do that kind of slowly, and then allow your gut microbiome and your gut time to adapt and get used to that. And then you can add a little bit more, and then you get a little bit more adaptation. So that process really kind of goes hand in hand, where as you add a little bit of time, you'll get more adaptation, which will help to improve your tolerance over the long term. And think often we think, gosh, I'm going to go home, I'm going to do a really good job of eating well this week. And so we load up on fruits and veggies and fibers. And it feels not great because you get a lot of gas and bloating and changes in your gut. And that kind of throws you off. And then we go back to square one. So going really, really slowly with a gradual intake is really important. And if you tend towards constipation, making sure you have a lot of fluid and a lot of water is really very important to that. Fiber is a carbohydrate, and so it's always going to be listed when we look at nutrition labels under the carbohydrate section. There's not very many companies or labels that actually state whether it's soluble or insoluble. So sometimes you have to do a little bit of searching if you're looking for lists around like what's a soluble fiber versus what's an insoluble fiber. You kind of have to poke around a little bit around that. If you're looking at supplements, psyllium, flaxseed, and oat bran are all like very commonly available fiber supplements that are easy to find. And those of you who really struggle with a lot of gas and bloating may be sensitive to FODMAPs, which is a whole other topic around gut health and irritable bowel syndrome in particular. But this is really a big source of bloating for a lot of people. So if you struggle to incorporate fiber because of gas and bloating and abdominal pain, then looking for fiber that is low in FODMAPs can be really helpful. FODMAPs are fermentable carbohydrates, essentially, that when they're inside the gut, they are not digested. And so they get to the colon largely intact, where the gut microbiome break them down, which is a good thing in terms of releasing short chain fatty acids, but it causes a whole lot of gas and air. So it's really uncomfortable. And then those small little carbohydrates also tend to have an osmotic effect where they pull water into the bowel, which creates a lot of fluid shifts into the bowel and diarrhea for many people. So FODMAPs often cause a lot of discomfort, and you can get fiber that is low in FODMAPs. It's a lot easier to tolerate. If you scan that little QR code, that'll give you some tips and pointers so you can scan that. And again, really starting low and very slowly and gradually increasing is the key to success. There's a number of different fiber supplements out there. So if you feel like making diet changes to get more fruits and vegetables and whole grains is unrealistic for any number of reasons, then there's a lot of really great fiber supplements that are out on the market now that there didn't used to be. There's a couple in particular that are they have a little asterisk beside them, and those are low FODMAPs fiber supplements. They're actually very easy to find in most drugstores and health food stores. So psyllium's been around forever. Many of you know that by its trade name. But you can also see partially hydrolyzed guar gum which I find a lot of people who don't tolerate fiber in their diet particularly well actually do quite well with partially hydrolyzed guar gum. And you can get that in a number of supplements at various health food stores. So that's a great source. I love ground flaxseed and chia seeds for adding to day-to-day smoothies and cereals and cooking and things like that. So those are easy ones to get in as well.
Sarah, what about Metamucil? That's an old familiar friend for to most people.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Metamucil is psyllium husk, actually. That's what it is. It's psyllium. My advice around that though is to get the cheapest, blandest stuff that you can find, because often supplements, for marketing purposes and to make them more palatable, make them actually taste good, they have a lot of flavorings and additives. But if you are sensitive to gas and bloating and pain or FODMAPs, then often the flavoring or the non-nutritive or artificial sweeteners that are put in those to make them taste better actually causes you symptoms. So if you've tried to take a fiber supplement and haven't done very well with it, then my recommendation is twofold. Number one, make sure that you're not getting additives in it by having the most boring stuff that you can find. And the second is to reduce the dose, probably down to about an 1/8. So you want to like go way, way, way down on the dose. So if the label says take 1 or 2 tablespoons, you start with like half a teaspoon and do that for a couple of weeks, and then slowly and gradually increase the amount you're getting. And that'll really help from a tolerance standpoint.
Thanks. Just could you go back and just show the QR code again?
Absolutely. Yeah, you bet.
And if you guys know how to do that, my kids showed me this. You just take your phone and go on photo, and but I can also probably give out some of the information in the follow-up email.
Absolutely. I'll send everything over to you. Yeah.
Great. There's a couple of questions about vegetables, since we're right here, if that's okay now.
Yeah, absolutely.
While people are getting the QR code. She says, I've just been told that there's some type of acid in kale and spinach that are not good for humans, and we should boil both before eating. How impactful is this acid to our overall diet?
Yeah, I had a really interesting conversation with a friend yesterday about sulfur containing foods. And I think it really highlights a lot of the messaging around food that we get nowadays. We have so much refinement in terms of understanding the biochemistry of food that it comes out into various social media and different types of blogs and things like that. And then we make it really, really, really complicated. And so, for the vast majority of the time, if we take an isolated compound out of a food and we study it in the lab, that's really very different than what its biological effect is for us day to day in an amount that we would normally consume. So, if you had a wheelbarrow full of spinach or a regular plate full of spinach, the effects are going to be different. And so my answer around most of those things for the vast majority of people is not to worry about them. I think we make food overly complicated. We've been on a kale craze for like 10 years now, right? It's been the vegetable to have. And we don't really see people doing unwell because of the amount of kale they're getting. So, I think be just really, really practical when we're getting those kind of messaging. In general, I don't think when they're part of a healthy, balanced diet where you're getting a lot of variety and a lot of different types of plant sources and nutrients from a lot of different things, that those really specific concerns actually add up to anything clinically meaningful.
Right. Yeah.
So I wouldn't worry about it.
we can really, myself included, get so caught up on because I also have a spinach smoothie every day, and we can really get caught up in the should and the shouldn'ts, right? So that's great to hear. Just another one along the line of veggies while we're here. Is there any value, Peter asked, any value in the proprietary probiotics, the engineered bacterial strains offered today versus good diet, or would both be effective in treating chronic pain? And are some fibers linked to better results than others? For example, lentils versus leeks.
So there's a couple of different parts to that question, and we'll circle back to it when we talk a little bit about prebiotics, um, uh, which are important form of fiber. Actually, like they form resistant fiber or resistant starches, I mean, that are broken down. So yeah, the different types of fiber do have different impacts on the gut, and they have different impacts on the gut microbiome. And my answer is a little bit similar. They're all important. There isn't one that's better than another. They do different things. They have different functions. And so it really depends a little bit on what you're looking for. So for example, if you tend to have a lot of gas and bloating, then you may be looking more towards trying to get more soluble type of fibers. They generally tend to be a little bit better tolerated. If you have a lot of constipation, you may be looking towards getting more insoluble fibers. It gets more complicated if we're trying to eat particular food to drive a particular bacterial species in the gut. So, you're thinking, I'm going to eat more of food A in order to get more of bacteria Y. That's the thinking that we're really kind of starting to get very interested in. And I think that has potential from a really personalized nutrition standpoint and strategy. But I also think right now that it's not ready for prime time, and we don't have really enough specifics and information to start making some of those recommendations or guidelines on a broad basis. So I would say, get a variety of fibers because again, we know without question that driving diversity and abundance is important. And the more variety you get in your diet, including variety of fibers, the more you're going to be able to give different nutrients to different type of bacteria, which overall increases abundance.
Maybe I'll slip one more in right now, just because I don't, I never know if it's a long answer or a short answer, but these things I have no idea. Are lemons healthy for the gut biome?
Are lemons healthy?
Yeah, like lemon juice. I hear a lot about, having lemon juice and water in the morning for your gut.
Yeah. I don't think there's like one specific food that's like the thing that's going to help us with our gut. I hear it all the time, like if it's oatmeal or lemons or spinach, we hear about like it. Isn't one thing that's great. It's really getting that abundance and diversity in all different kinds of things. The lemon water thing has not really had a lot of scientific data for it. I think a lot of people get benefit from having a nice hot cup of lemon water in the morning, and I don't think it's necessarily related to the lemon. I think it's often related to number one, taking time to relax, which is good for your gut health, and probably a lot of other things. And I think getting more fluid and sometimes that warm water first thing in the morning kind of stimulates things to get moving in the morning, which can be helpful if you tend towards constipation. But there isn't actually a lot of really strong scientific data that tells us that lemon juice is the thing.
Thank you.
So we want to think about fermented foods as well as being a source of probiotics. And, when we look at definitions of fermented foods that provide probiotics specifically, yogurt and kefir are the only two things on the market that have been very well studied in terms of their specific bacterial content and their specific impacts on different aspects of health. So irritable bowel linking probiotics in yogurt, for example. we don't have a lot of data around the type of bacteria that are in other foods that we know do contain bacteria. So we know that kombucha, kefir, sauerkraut, a number of other types of food do in fact contain live microorganisms, but they haven't been extensively studied in terms of their probiotic capacities. So we don't know what sauerkraut does specifically to irritable bowel, for example. What we do know again is that the more fermented foods we get in our diet, the more we're generally introducing more types of bacteria. And that seems to be important overall for promoting a healthy gut microbiome. So lots of different food sources that contain living bacteria are helping to contribute to that abundance and diversity. And then polyphenols are naturally occurring plant compounds that have antioxidant properties. And if you think about things that you'd want to take to have beautiful skin or hair that are good for you in terms of antioxidants and lots of nutrients and plant chemicals, those same things are also good for your microbiome. So if it's good for you, it's good for your gut bacteria. That's probably generally a good way to think about the nutrients that we ingest. So, getting back to one of the questions, prebiotics, this is the difference between different types of fibers. Prebiotic foods are really crucial in enhancing the gut microbiome because they are non-digestible fibers. And they're things like oligosaccharides or inulin, if anyone's ever seen supplements with inulin in them, that resist digestion in the upper GI tract. And so they get to the colon largely intact, where they can be fermented by beneficial bacteria. So prebiotics help to stimulate healthy bacteria. They can be turned into short-chain fatty acids and other important metabolites which help to modulate the immune system and all other kinds of good things. So, we can think of prebiotics in terms of being garlic or onions or asparagus, bananas. Those are all good sources of prebiotics. We can also think of things like resistant starches. So if we think about cooked potatoes, for example, they have a lot of resistant starch that acts as a prebiotic. Whole grains, lots of different types of fruit, pectin. So you think about applesauce, how it gets that sort of gooey consistency or gel-like consistency, also has prebiotic fibers. So those are great source of nutrients, again, to really foster the health of the gut microbiome. So we need prebiotics in order to really encourage the health of the gut microbiome. But if you think about it, they're also really important to the utilization of probiotics. So when we ingest probiotics for beneficial purposes, our diet helps to sustain those probiotics. So it doesn't make much sense to have a bag of chips with a probiotic when you're trying to maintain a healthy gut microbiome, right? We want to give, when we're taking probiotics, when we're trying to get fermented foods into our diet and really encourage that abundance and diversity, the nutrition that we would have for ourselves is also really important for the health of those bacteria that we're taking. So they really need to go hand in hand. So when we're taking probiotics, which I'm going to talk about next, we want to think about incorporating prebiotic sources into them, because those prebiotics, meaning they come before, are really the nutrients that help to sustain probiotics when we do take them. So probiotics are another way to increase diversity and abundance in the gut microbiome. And it's important to note that they need to be alive to be considered a probiotic. So we want them to be living so that they can really get into the gut and set up shop, essentially, and stay inside the gut and really be able to proliferate. Now, we know that the gut microbiome is more than just bacteria, and similarly, probiotics can be more than just bacteria. So, for example, many of you would have seen a yeast probiotic called Saccharomyces, which is really commonly available for a number of different reasons. One of the things to remember is that species and strain matters. And so what's commercially available and what's been studied in larger clinical trials may not always be the same. And so sometimes what works in a clinical trial just may not be commercially available to us as consumers. And that can make a difference when we're looking at the data. So the benefits of a lot of probiotics are actually very strain specific. Probiotics have a number of potential benefits when it comes to gut health in terms of balancing the gut microbiome and aiding in nutrient absorption. There are some studies that suggest that they can help improve immune function, reduce inflammation. They're really important in preventing and treating diarrhea, and in particular, antibiotic-associated diarrhea. And then there's some emerging data that they may be important to mental health through a reduction in inflammatory mediators through the gut-brain axis. So a lot of emerging and potential benefits to probiotics. So, and that last QR code is just a little guide to how to choose probiotics. How do you choose the right one? Because there's so many out there. And so to speak to that, the most important thing that you can do is, number one, identify what you're taking the probiotic for. Because when we look at the data, different types of probiotics do different jobs. So it depends if you're trying to treat a skin or a mental health condition, or you're trying to treat irritable bowel syndrome, or even within gut health, if you're treating antibiotic-associated diarrhea or ulcerative colitis. Those are completely different data sets and different types of bacteria that may be beneficial for that particular condition. So just like when you're choosing a medication, you need to think about the specific outcome or health need that you have that you want to choose an antibiotic or a probiotic for. It's important to understand different types of strains, the colony forming units, or how much is in a probiotic, the concentration of it, because in order to be effective, you have to have enough of it. And then again, you want it to be a living organism. So quality control does matter. We want to add prebiotics. Again, you want to add the nutrition through fiber and prebiotics that are really going to sustain those bacteria once you've consumed them. And it's often really helpful to talk to a pharmacist or a health professional when you're trying to wade through the massive number of probiotics that are on the market right now, because there really are a lot of them. So this is actually a great PDF document from the Alliance for Education on Probiotics. It's their 2024 guide to choosing probiotics. It's extensive and it breaks down probiotic choice based on what health outcome you're looking for. So if you're looking for a really good resource on choosing a probiotic, that's a fantastic one. It's Canadian. So it has Canadian brand names and resources, and it's also got a great website. So if you're looking for more information, that's a really great resource. So if we think a little bit further, other than diet and potentially pre and probiotics, what other levers can we pull through lifestyle to try and promote gut health and the health of the gut microbiome? Stress, sleep, and physical activity.
Can I interrupt you for one sec, just to go back for one sec to probiotics? Because I think it's a good question. Is it possible to get enough probiotics from food sources, or are they recommended for are the supplements recommended for everyone for optimal gut health? It's a question I've also wondered.
Yeah, it's a great question. There is not a lot of data that for those of us who are well and don't have a specific um, illness or health concern, that taking a probiotic is necessary. So if you generally have good gut health with no symptoms and you're generally quite well, there is not data that we need to take
Okay.
a probiotic. Maintaining your abundant and diverse microbiome through healthy nutrition is probably the most important thing that you can do.
Okay.
And I think probiotics are kind of the bonus when you're trying to treat health, gut health or really replete your microbiome if you've had an illness or you've got specific symptoms.
Great.
But we don't need to treat them like an insurance policy. you know,
Right.
yeah. So lifestyle, believe it or not, makes difference on the gut microbiome, and so sleep matters. We know that when we have poor quality sleep, that is associated with dysbiosis or an unhealthy balance of bacteria inside the gut. When we are sleep deprived, there's less microbial diversity. This also alters the circadian rhythm of the microbes that are inside the gut. So the gut microbiome, there are a number of bacteria that actually have a circadian rhythm, which I think is amazing.
Wow.
It means that the bacteria inside our gut, and it's dark in there, are being exposed to light that we can sense. And all of those chemicals and neurotransmitters that go back and forth, that tell the microbiome whether or not it's day or night. So when we have disruptions in our sleep and our circadian rhythm, it actually disrupts the circadian rhythm of the gut microbiome. And we also know that when we're sleep deprived or we don't have good quality sleep, we don't cope with stress or pain particularly well. And when that happens, biochemically that affects the gut and the microbiome through hormones, and inflammatory mediators, but it also changes our eating habits. So, when we're sleep deprived, we tend to go for the stuff that's higher in sugar, higher in fat, higher processed type of foods, all of which are deleterious for the gut microbiome. So, poor sleep has an impact not only on our own physiology and the physiology of the gut microbiome, it changes what we're eating, and that further has a negative impact. So sleep actually really matters. The same is also true for stress. We know that the more stress that we have, there are changes in the composition, the diversity, and the function of the gut microbiome. And this has been associated with changes in intestinal barrier function. So really preventing that leaky gut concept, and it changes gut motility and immune function. So stress, we know it impacts us, but it also impacts the health of our gut microbiome, and it's really worth considering how we manage our stress. And finally, exercise similarly has been linked to a healthy gut microbiome. So in general, people who exercise more have more microbial diversity and abundance, and they also tend to have more beneficial bacteria. They tend to have more robust intestinal barrier and enhanced immune system. So exercise and stress management really are quite important for the health of the microbiome. So, and then finally, the other things that are within our control that I think really are worth mentioning is that smoking and alcohol have both been shown to be hard on the lining of the gut directly, but also have negative impacts on the gut microbiome. So there are two, lifestyle changes that we can make that are important considerations in this entire chain. So I think with that, I'll stop and take any questions any more questions that we have. And then we have a little newsletter, and often I do other workshops that I'll post on the website. So if those are of interest to people, they're welcome to scan there too. Oh, Madeline, I think you're on mute.
I'm talking away to myself here. No, I just said I did the QR code for the last two, and there is a wealth of information in there to sift through. So that's so great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we just have two questions that have been
Yeah.
sitting
Mhm.
here patiently. Um,
Yeah, the one
yeah,
was
wow,
on.
lots to consider and think about. Melissa asks, curious thoughts on treating H. pylori with 714 day, several times personally over a few years.
H. pylori is a loaded question. Yeah, that is like there are textbooks written on H. pylori, so it's actually not a fast question. But what I would say
Mm.
is that the regimens are really hard to take. They're usually triple or quadruple regimens, so 2 or 3 antibiotics plus an antacid or Pepto-Bismol or some kind of combination. And it's important actually to do a 14-day regimen in the vast majority of cases, because the rates of H. pylori antibiotic resistance are now extremely high. And that can vary depending on what region of the country you're um, in terms of specific resistance patterns, but it's a really big emerging issue. So we want people to really do their best to get through the entire 14 days if they can. And beyond that, there's actually like a lot of different intricacies to H. pylori.
Wow, thank you. And a question from Annie about peptides like VPC dash 157.
Yes, yes. I'm getting so many peptide questions lately, and in like a number of different forums, and they're really interesting. The bottom line is that there's still a lot of work to do in clinical trials and in large population studies that just aren't out there yet. So I think that we'll see more and more of that, but right now we don't know exactly how to use them, for how long, for who, and for what indications. So I think there's a lot of excitement coming out around those. We also don't know how they interact with other types of medications, for example. Um, and there's just a lot that we don't know about them. So I think they have therapeutic potential. I know a lot of people are really excited, but at the moment they're not available to us on a clinically relevant level. Although I know lots of people are trying to get their hands on them through different means, they're not currently licensed for us. So yeah, I think stay tuned, because I think we'll start to see more of that. And I do
Okay,
think they have
thank
potential.
you.
Yeah.
So we probably have time for one last question, and I think this is a question that kind of probably relates to everybody here. From Fraser, if someone has changed their diet or sleep or stress management in a significantly positive way, how long would you expect to take to see a physical change in their health? Month, 3 months, 9 months, like a reasonable expectation to
Yeah.
see a shift.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, when we start to change our diet, there are subtle changes in the gut microbiome, even within 24 to 48 hours. So things you wouldn't necessarily feel or notice, but those shifts actually start to happen quite quickly. It probably takes months to really start to notice all of those things start to accumulate. I think 3 to 6 months is a reasonable time frame to start to see positive changes around that. Of course, everyone's a little bit different, and it depends what else is happening in your health. But I think 3 to 6 months is a reasonable strategy. One of the things that's really interesting around prebiotics that I think people need to remember, we talked last week about the microbiome being a little bit like a fingerprint, and it develops when we're born, and it's really that fingerprint by the time we're about 5 years old is kind of ours. And when we shift our diet, or we take probiotics, for example, those changes are that happen in the microbiome are not enduring unless we persist with it. So when you take a probiotic, if you really want to keep that bacteria in your gut and you're finding you're getting health benefits from it, you feel better, whatever the thing is that you're trying to treat, often you need to stay on that probiotic over the longer term. It's not usually just a short 2-week kind of try it and then come off it. So if you're noticing benefits, in order to sustain them, we need to hang on to them, because that gut microbiome that we have is like a fingerprint. And if we don't stay on a healthy diet, if we don't stay on our probiotic that's working for us, we will drift back to our old 5-year-old finger.
Yeah, that was a bit of information that I picked up that I didn't realize that. That's really helpful. So yeah, great. Well, I think it's been another just a webinar full of great information. And if I think we pretty much got to most of the questions, might have been one or two outstanding. Please you can email them to me, and or again, they might or we'll try to our best if they're still coming up. If they haven't been answered, to answer them next week. There's so much that we want to know about this, and so much that I think it's just so much information out there, from so many different sources. So I really appreciate this wise approach to gut health.
It's hard to pack it all in an hour. I can.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I have a
absolutely.
feeling we're going to have to do some follow-ups in as the weeks go on. But I hope that everybody will come. Next week, we are talking about, what's our topic for next week, Sarah?
We're going to talk about chronic pain medications and how those affect the gut. So, so I think so many people get constipation and various things relating to their medications. So we're going to try and dive into that. So we'll move away from the gut microbiome stuff and take a really practical approach to digestive health, related to some of the interventions that we need.
Right.
Great.
Thanks, Sarah.
And that actually, so there was a couple of questions, at least one that we didn't get to, that was about side effects. So please bring that next week, because that's what we're going to dive into. So we'll look forward to that. And yeah, thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to Mark to finish us up here.
Yeah, no, that was very informative. Thank you. I'm looking forward to next week's as well, from the the medication perspective, because that I think will be very applicable as well. It's been so useful and so much really valuable information. So thank you, Sarah.
Lovely to see everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, cool.
See you next week.
Absolutely. See you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Great. Bye. Thanks for being here, everyone. And we will see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.